Welcome to Mr. Chalk's Revision Tips.
When answering exam questions, there are a few key things to remember, right? So just remember, exam technique is a key part in preparation for any exams, and it's something that you'll pick up the more you go and you do past papers. Right, so many questions in exams are repeats of what will be in old exams. So going and looking at lots of generic questions beforehand is a good idea. When going and answering and questions and reading them, there's a few things just take into account. Make sure you go read the question at least twice so you don't make any mistakes when you're reading them. As you're reading them, go highlight key information. Don't make assumptions about what the question is asking. Make sure after you've answered it, you go check your work for daft errors that you might make. And if it involves going and answering something where there's some calculation, make sure that you write your workings out down. Right, let's go and have a look at the question.
Carbohydrates are biological macromolecules made up of smaller molecules called monomers. Right, so monomers is quite important. So carbohydrates include sugars, starch, and other fibers. They're stabilized by the fact that they have lots of carbon and hydrogen and oxygen atoms in them. Right, there are several ways to go and classify carbohydrates. So some of these classifications are based on the molecular structure and can be divided primarily into simple sugars. So the chemical composition of simple sugars is made up of either one sugar molecule, so a monosaccharide, mono meaning one, right, or two molecules of the monosaccharide linked together, forming a molecule of a disaccharide, di meaning two. Right, complex sugars are polysaccharides, poly meaning many, right, which are made up of monosaccharides such as starch, cellulose, and glycogen. So each of them is made up of glucose molecules combined together. So complex sugars are generally insoluble in water and have a high molecular weight and don't taste sweet. So if we think about glucose, so glucose is a small molecule, so it's small enough so it can go and pass into and out of the villi cells into the bloodstream relatively easily. Right, subsequently, these release energy in the cells because we know that we use it in respiration. So all carbohydrates are formed from the elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So the general formula is CH2O, then little brackets around it and N, and the N just represents the number of times that the basic CH2O unit is repeated. So the formula that is shared by glucose with other simple sugars, so things like fructose. Like we said, simple sugars are known as monosaccharides, so mono just meaning one of them. So the molecular formula of glucose is C6H12O6. Right, however, this does not indicate how the atoms bond together. So bonding to the carbon atoms are a number of hydrogens and a number of hydroxyl groups. So different positions of these groups on the carbon chain are represented for different properties of different molecules. So we just go and look at a quick question. So the information below is about carbohydrates. So glucose, like we've said, is a monomer of polysaccharides such as starch and glycogen. Glucose is an important source of energy, right? We already know that. Glycogen is an energy storage molecule. Starch is a molecule that's found in many plants. And aminopectin is one of two polysaccharides that constitute the molecular structure of starch. So we're stating one property of glucose that makes it good to be transported. Right, it's about the fact that it's polar, so it's relatively soluble. If we're explaining how the structure of glycogen differs from that of aminopectin, Right, remember that's a type of starch. Key things that we need to talk about is the fact that it's more branch, it's coiled, it's more compact, so it leaves less space for storage. The branching goes and gives more free end, so more glucose can be added or removed either by condensation reaction or hydrolysis, respectively. Right, the molecule below, so describe how the structure of alpha glucose will differ from that in figure 1.1. Right, it's relatively easy. That OH group there would be flipped around in the opposite direction. So hopefully you have found that useful. If you've got any questions, then drop it in the comments below, and we'll be uploading a lot more. Right, good luck, folks.